Based on their experiences, 17 different people, different cultural practitioners, artists, creatives, organizers, directors, will discuss the challenges accompanying art making in varying socio-political contexts. They'll share their insight on knowledge production, building networks, and the tools they've accumulated while navigating their respective fields. Each day we'll host 2 panels and a live performance, as I stated. Sorry, I'm reading the text. Today we're going to start on the festival panel. This is a very exciting time for Beirut to have the festival panelists, because we do know that we currently have a festival ongoing with Metropolis, and the director is here with us. We also have Beirut and Beyond's upcoming festival. So they're going to be discussing the different parameters of that, from building it to creating it to how everything can come together and make magic. This particular series is a great honor to be doing it in partnership with the British Council and the Momentum program. Today we have with us Maisa and Mark from the British Council, so thank you for joining us. To start off, I'm going to just introduce the panelists and moderator and then kick off the first panel. We'll be taking a slight break after this panel, which you can grab a drink, and then we'll start the second panel shortly after. So try to stay around the area. I'll introduce first and foremost, I don't need to read your bio, but I feel like I should. So I'm going to introduce the moderator for the evening. Her name is luxx. She's a poet, essayist, playwright, and activist, widely published in anthologies and literary journals, including by Penguin Books and New England Review. Her debut collection, Fetch Your Mother's Heart, was released in 2021 and traces the longing and grief of revolution happening within and outside the body. She is also a guest lecturer in universities in the UK and US on politics and resistance. Put your hands together for luxx.
Hello, everyone. It's a big pleasure to be kicking off I'm going to call it like a mini festival, actually, that we have going on here. And I think Dana's just introduced everything, but it'd be really nice to just give a round of applause to Haven for Artists for the programming, British Council for the support, and Beirut Art Centre for hosting as well. A phenomenal 2 days where we're going to build community together, develop individually as artists and collectively as artists as well. So let's just give a hand for them to start it off. All right, so I think it's actually really nice that I am going to bring on the panelists, by the way, but just give me a second. I think it's actually really nice that we're kicking off these 2 days with discussing festivals. I mean, traditionally, even the word festival, right, it comes from the etymology of feasts, plural, feasts. And I think that's a very nice way to start these 2 days, and also to start thinking about us as a community in Beirut of artists, and the way in which we communally come together, nourish ourselves, and also maybe fight over the food sometimes, you know. So I think kicking off with festivals and thinking through how festivals bring sentient art into conversation with each other, and using this lens to move forward with over the next 2 days feels like good programming, Haven, yeah, good programming. So, I'm going to start off with introducing our panelists for today. Is the sound okay, by the way? There's a little tom-tom. You're okay? There's not a tom-tom in your ear? Okay, no tom-tom, okay. All right, so the 3 festivals that we're going to be talking to today are definitely festivals that you all already know about, but we're going to get to know them a little bit more, because we're going to be exploring relationships between artists, principles and practices through the lens and context of these 3 major festivals. So when I name your festival, perhaps come take your seat, and then I'll be able to tell people a little bit more about yourself as individual practitioners. So first of all, today we're going to be looking through the lens of Irtijal, which was founded in 2000, meaning that we have 23 years of its existence in Beirut. Now this is the oldest music festival in the city. It's got a wide musical range that includes experimental music, free jazz, free improvisation, contemporary music, noise, free rock, as well as other forms of innovative music making. And I want you to really meditate on the word innovative when we talk about Irtijal and we speak to Sharif. So can I just bring you down to the stage? Thank you. This is Sharif Sarnawi, the co-founder of Irtijal. Okay? The other festival that we're going to be discussing and bringing into context today is Beirut and Beyond International Music Festival. So this is a yearly showcase festival that aims to promote and support both rising and established artists from the MENA region and beyond. And if you can meditate on the word support when we're talking about Beirut and Beyond International Music Festival, welcome Amani Semaan. The third and final festival and organisation that we're going to be speaking with today is Metropolis Cinema. Now, the Metropolis Cinema Association is dedicated to promoting independent cinema in Lebanon and in the wider MENA region through diverse programming, industry training, young audience outreach, and preservation of film heritage in order to allow for greater accessibility to alternative films, both locally and regionally. And there's a yearly, established yearly festival here in Lebanon. So let's welcome Hania Mroué. Welcome all of you. It's really great to be in conversation with you. And if you don't mind, I feel like I've been talking for a while already, but I do just want to introduce people to you guys personally and your own bios and who is behind the festivals as well. Are you all right with me continuing talking and introducing them? Because get your notepads out because they're a very inspiring bunch, okay? So, Sharif Sanawi, who is the co-founder of Irtijal. Now, Sharif is also a free improvising guitarist. Now, he plays both electric and acoustic guitars with a focus on expanding the intrinsic possibilities of these instruments. And from what I've learned about Sharif, there seems to be a central drive to his work, expanding intrinsic possibility, okay? He's performed music worldwide, not internationally, I mean worldwide. Baltimore, Athens, Berlin, Sharjah, Cairo, everywhere. He also runs 2 record labels, Al-Maslach, which is to publish the unpublishable, and Anahaya, which is sampling, recycling, and displacement of various aspects of popular culture. He's also in 2 group projects, which is the A Trio and Wormholes, and he works extensively with dance, with theatre, composes music for film. Now, along with Mazen Karbash, he created Irtijal in 2000, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, innovation and collaboration are the heart of what you do. It seems to me so. Would you say that's fair?
Very true.
Very true. I think so too. Okay. Amani, thank you guys for sitting exactly in the order in which I have you guys printed, by the way. It's perfect for me. So Amani was a line producer and casting director for international non-scripted TV shows such as The Voice Arabia, and also an independent consultant for arts and culture projects. I see in your work, in your history, this penchant for developing artists and continuing to platform artists and propel people forward and ideas forward. And she is now the co-founder and director of Beirut and Beyond, which is a Lebanese organization that promotes and develops independent music from the MENA region. It is a showcase festival with professional programs and also European tours. And finally, Hania Mroué, who is, okay, don't hold your breath because I've got a minute here with this. You do a lot. You have done a lot. Film programmer, distributor, industry professional. She founded and became the director of Metropolis Cinema, which is the only art house movie theatre in Lebanon, and that was launched in 2006. She established MC Distribution, a company dedicated to distributing Arab and international independent titles in the MENA region. She was a founding member of the Beirut DC Association, which supports and promotes independent Arab films. She's the managing director of the organization's Arab Film Festival, Ayam Beirut al-Cinemaiya.
I was the director, but I think...
This is all?
It's okay, you can stop here.
But it sounds great. Can I continue? It sounds good, guys. Remember I said feasts? Yeah, we're starting right now on the feast, okay? Just a little bit more. Okay. Because she also served as chief Arab programmer at the Doha Tribeca Film Festival. Yeah? All right. Currently, she's programming consultant of the Marrakesh still International Film Festival. All right. And Mroué has also been a jury member at a number of huge film festivals such as Cannes, Berlinale, Adelaide, and Malatia International Film Festival. I think there is definitely a sense, from what I've picked up from researching you, of archiving heritage, disseminating. And I really see Hania here as a backbone to Arab cinema and its place on the world map. So please give a round of applause for our three speakers today. And thank you for putting up with, with that, but you guys deserve it. So we're going to talk for a little bit, and then at the end, I'm going to give you guys some time to ask any questions. Okay, so please, I encourage you to get your notebooks out, make notes on what these three very wise maestros have to say, and just make a note of any questions that you have. So we want to start out with thinking about the relationship between festivals and artists themselves. So I will ask, let me start with you, Amani. I will ask you, what does radical care mean in the relationship between festival organizer or curator and the artist? Because I know that Beirut and Beyond has used also the word sanctuary for what it does, and this idea of developing. So what does it mean to you, radical care?
Well, I think it's a huge term, but that can. When we started Beirut and Beyond, actually in 2013, we used a lot the word of Beirut being an asylum seeker for musicians from around the region, I would say. And the purpose of creating Beirut and Beyond as a showcase festival for all the independent productions of the region was to show care about the musicians, their work, and expose it. Being radical in this care, this is where I wanted to say that it's a large word, how to be radical in the care, or how to define it towards musicians or other artists. But this is the purpose of creating Beirut and Beyond, is caring about the artists, or trying to give as much as possible as we can to the development of the independent music scene. Throughout the work since 2013 until now, I mean, things have changed. The word asylum seeker maybe have had different connotations or meanings, but what we try to create as a platform is for the musicians to come, like to have a place to go to when they want to explore their music, develop their music, extend the reach of their music, professionalize the way they work. So maybe this is how we try to care for musicians as a platform. As a programming festival, because Beirut and Beyond started as a festival, but we have developed in the last 2 years, especially with the situation in Beirut, to an institution or an organism that's like we have now the two the two sections of Beirut and Beyond, the programming and the festival, but also the whole development part that works on the residencies, the workshops, the support programs that we created since 2020. And this is where also we try to show the care, let it be radical or not, for the Lebanese local or the local musicians who live here. So this is what I have to introduce for that.
No, beautiful. Thank you for that. Because there definitely seems to be a sense of facing two ways consistently. You know, even the festival that's coming up, I know there'll be a performance by an artist and then possibly a workshop. So it's this kind of line of passing on skill, passing on.
It is a passing on skills. It's also a search for the needs to try to fill them. Because if we want to talk about the needs in the independent music sector, it's not the purpose. But what we try to do is, when we invite people internationally, we try to see how they could be relevant for the local music scene. So for this upcoming edition, we have a lot of workshops during the festival, so we can connect the people, we can share expertise, we can take advantage of the experts who are coming from worldwide or even from the region. Let's not only say from the internationals. We have a workshop with Amani Semaan, who's coming from Egypt. We have several workshops from people who are Egyptian, Tunisian, or else. So we try to construct on that, like the community sharing, the filling of the needs, the filling the gaps, way of doing things during the festival or throughout the year.
Yeah. The community seems to be a central part as well of workshopping and bringing people together. And I wonder, Hania, so you've worked on these huge festivals, these international festivals on in the film industry, and also on more localized grassroots projects as well. So how does radical care, and we can also, contest that word radical as well, come into play between these two? Please do.
Yeah.
Please do. Yeah.
So when it comes to cinema, at least there's a problem of definition, which I think is very good, because when we're talking about the kind of films that we usually program, some call them independent cinema, art house cinema, auteur cinema, festival cinema, whatever. There are different words to name the kind of films that we like to promote, that we like to defend. And this gives us a margin to show a little bit everything, because in other countries, especially in Europe, these definitions are very precise. When in this part of the world, when you say independent, it's as if there is a mainstream cinema that we are independent from. So for us, being radical has nothing to do maybe with the kind of films that we screen, but it's more related to our position in the market when it comes to the landscape and when it comes to what other commercial cinemas usually screen. So for instance, when we started in 2006, cinemas in Beirut used to screen exclusively American blockbusters. So anything that is not American blockbuster, when we started screening Lebanese films, it was already a radical position towards these other commercial entities. Then screening documentaries, then screening maybe films from like not necessarily from Europe, but maybe from Africa, from Asia or something, So that's when it comes to the word radical. But then I also have maybe a problem with the word care, because I consider that our relationship with the artists that we promote, the artists that we like to work with, is a two-way relationship. Especially that Metropolis, especially in the beginning, was not solid enough to position itself as an institution that is here to to help or to support artists. It was in both directions. So I think the artists in Lebanon supported very much Metropolis when they trusted us with their films. And we tried also in return to offer something to this community of artists. We tried, for instance, to break certain market laws when it comes to releasing their films, respecting their works, giving them the space that they want. But the trust is mutual. So that's why I think they care for us as much as we care for them, and I like it.
Yeah, that's a really poignant point, actually. I guess maybe the word that we should be focusing on in this question is relationship, actually, rather than care, because care sounds like something that one person gives, but it's relational. Thank you for that response. Sharif, I'm very actually interested in this meditation on the word radical when it comes to Irtijal and your work also, actually more broadly, because innovation is such at the heart of what you do. So how does any notion of radical or radical community play into that?
Definitely. I think it's quite clear that radicality, at least in the artistic content in what we present or what I play as a musician, is almost first degree. Like that's the first thing you would see if you saw, like, let's say, I was often referred to even by my own wife as the guy who plays guitar with forks and spoons. So, but I didn't take it very badly, so it's okay. And there is it was a bit depreciative, but in a way you are conscious that it's because what you are proposing is, beyond the beaten path or besides what people expect, and a whole cultural frame and baggage which basically helps people understand their surroundings and help them understand music. So if you're coming from a completely different perspective on the same thing, obviously it looks radical, even extremely radical in some instances and cases. And this is a radicality that we assume, I guess you could say. Yeah.
There's a connection between what you're both talking about as well, then, in terms of pushing back against what is expected from going along to a festival and seeing a blockbuster, for example, an American blockbuster, or seeing a guitarist not play with spoons and forks, you know. And
I've never played with a spoon or a fork, just for the record.
You realise we now can't get that out of our head, you know. That's all we're going to think about for the rest of the evening.
You've done worse.
Worse, for sure, but spoons and forks are boring. Yeah, anyway.
Okay,
but just to say, I mean, because I'm curious, because it's when you gave us the question, it was the first time I read the idea of radical care, and I didn't actually. Now I realize that I didn't really understand what you meant. Like, well, I radical and care together. Anyway,
I think it's certainly not mine to define, and it's something that has to continually be communally defined, like what we mean by that. And if I'm going to take on your definition there of radical, and look at it as something that is innovative and is not doing what is expected of care, perhaps care, you know, might look like something transactional and in a mainstream way. You pay the artist. Potentially you pay the artist on time. That could be care, non-radical care, you know. And then radical care, I really like this idea of the two-way relationship as well, you know, and how there's mutual support, what you can do beyond expected care. But actually, I'd be really interested if, when we get to the Q&A, if anybody wants to offer their own definition of radical care, because it's certainly not something that one person can define, but we have to communally define it again and again. So yeah, great point, and I'm glad that we interrogated those two words actually a lot. And it brings us to the idea of principles and ethics, I guess, as well. And what have been, or what is the role of founding principles or founding ethics in the festivals that you all head up? Amani, are you happy picking that one up? Maybe we can narrow that slightly and look at potentially, is there a role of a festival having a political stance?
This is not narrowing. This
Yeah, exactly.
is broadening.
I did. Let's just interrogate political stance now. Let's just, yeah.
From my point of view, and maybe as a young festival trying to establish its name among the local and the international scene, we have never taken, you know, a radical political action but this is because we have created, the purpose of what we are creating is mostly to focus on music and focus on the industry and focus on trying to give the expertise, the skills, the means, the ways, anything that we could work on through our connections or international networks or local work or the funding or the support we get from several funding entities. We focus on that, on making the music scene a bit more professional, on creating a bit more opportunities. Of course, there is always the ethics or we live in a region that also you have to have, in a world where you need to have a political say on some matters. But sincerely, from our point of view, we try to focus on something else at some point. And sometimes okay, I know that we have a role as festivals, as cultural practitioners, and especially in Lebanon, especially in the last 2 years. But at some point, we do not always have this responsibility because we have another focus at some point that is to make a festival, to bring music to a stage, to have people come discover new music, to create opportunities to other artists to. So it's, of course, we will discuss how we can have this political role or influence, because also with time, Beirut and Beyond has started with a 600 as audience, and now we've grown. We have influence, but as well we have the responsibility to focus on our missions without letting go any ethics, of course, because one of our missions is to try and promote ethical attitude and ethical work in the cultural industry. But for politics, from our side, we have been always like trying to protect ourselves from this and trying to be how to say the word, like correct. So maybe correct will now not be radical, but yeah, we're radical on other matters. But
yeah, no, I think it's really interesting to bring in the word responsibility there as well, and also who is expected to have responsibility too. It actually kind of reminds me of an interview that I saw that you did, Hania, about 10 years ago, actually. And you spoke about festivals' urge to have responsibility when there is political destabilization to artists, to films and what have you, that they may not have outside of that particular global news cycle.
Yeah. I think if I understand well what Amani is trying to say is that the initial drive to start a festival, because it's not easy, it's not something that comes as a leisure or as a hobby. You know that when you start a festival, you're entering like you're going on an adventure that you don't know where it's going to lead you, and there's also the responsibility towards the audience to sustain this festival that you're creating. So definitely the initial drive is passion, but it's also the love of the works that you're presenting. You want to share these works with the audience, with your community, with your friends, with your family, whatever surrounding. So that's really what motivates you in the beginning to start a festival and to screen those films. But then I think the political positioning of the festival, maybe you realize it afterwards. Of course, when programming films, when putting a program together, when putting this film before this one, when putting this one next to this next one, there is a certain dialogue that comes out of this specific programming. So the same titles, depending on the order, depending on the what we call the slotting of the films, it creates a different meaning. So this is where the political positioning of a festival appears clearly, but mainly it appears from the reaction that you get from society, from the government. For instance, just to give a very simple example, when we used to program أيام بيروت السينمائية, the Arab Film Festival, we never wanted to be provocative, but the fact of presenting certain films that did not get the censorship approval turned us into an entity that defends artists' freedom of speech, etc. So the festival became a platform for artists to not only to express themselves and to show their works, but also to carry this battle against censorship. And also the fact that the festival never agreed, we never agreed to cut any film unless the director himself agrees and makes these cuts. And whenever also a director faced any pressure or intimidation from censorship, the festival would support the artist and protect him. So that's where you become political.
Yeah. It calls to mind an image in my head, which is almost that the politics becomes atmospheric. It's almost the subtext or the subconscious of what's happening, rather than being placed first and foremost. It's it almost becomes environmental and the response to that.
Yes, because if you start this festival with a political idea, then you might quickly fall into propaganda or ideologies, or So you want to escape this. You just try to program as freely as possible. But then you realize the limitation, and and it's this confrontation that that defines your political position.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Sharif, I want to bring this notion of principles into the context of bringing artists together. So bringing collaborations together and the compatibility. And of course, you work internationally a lot as well and with different regions. So how do your grounding principles come into effect when you're looking at international collaborations, for example, and artist compatibility?
Yeah, I think there is too many answers to that question.
Just
to be honest,
one
I mean, there is not, in the sense that there is not one clear principle that you use. It's intuition and touch and go. So we made a lot of mistakes, put together people who couldn't work together, and then you learn as you go to try to make this collaboration the more as fruitful as possible. And as Amani was saying, there's a type of collaboration which is also more knowledge sharing. So if you bring somebody who has a specific type of knowledge, you need to put him in a context where this knowledge will be shared. So basically, and I think also international guests who come here learn a lot from us as well. So I'm not sure I have a principle.
Well, actually,
for all this.
From what I deduced, it's the sense of staying fluid and continuing to learn, right? And not being rigid in your principle, so that you can be aware when something hasn't worked, or when somebody has been hurt, or something has potentially gone, I wouldn't say wrong, but when there's been an incompatibility, perhaps, that you learn from it and move forward, because that's what I got from what you said. And I would say that's a principle in its own right.
Sure, it's a more of a empirical principle. You learn it as you go. You cannot. It's not like a block that you impose. It's funny how it works. I don't know. Some people I put together have been now working together for like 20 years, maybe. Like I don't know. Let's say Raed Yassin and Pat Conca. So it was almost like a stupid idea to put them together because their names are similar, the way they are written, nearly. And today they're like touring the whole planet all year long. They have hundreds of shows in a year. But if you had asked me when I put them together at the time, like if you tell me, these people, they will work together for years to come, I would have said, well, I have no idea why you think that, maybe, but but so you never really know. And we've had the opposite. Some people I thought, these would be a fantastic match. Once I put two musicians together, and the Lebanese one walked off the stage in the middle of the show, so because it was going absolutely the wrong way. And there was. Later, I tried to think, could I have seen this coming? And actually, no. So there is always an element of risk, but in my opinion, a risk worth taking, because otherwise... I mean, there are other festivals, maybe not in Lebanon, but around the globe, who only present finished products, and it has to be clear, the thing you're presenting, and... others who like to challenge and take risks. So I think this is where it's
This is where it's at.
And we drive people away.
Also, it's part of it. Innovation is always going to do that, It actually reminds me, because in Beirut and Beyond you have Nancy Munir coming, and I have this similar relationship actually with her, where we were brought together very randomly and have become such compatible artists. Nancy Munir is a Egyptian composer, and so Beirut and Beyond is coming up. Actually, and we'll make sure that you take time to make note of exactly when that will be. But one show that I really urge you all to go to is Nancy Munir, a very, very, very talented, crazy genius.
Yeah, it's her actually debut album. نزهة النفوس. She's gonna perform it next Thursday in Ballroom.
Next Thursday in Ballroom, yeah. She jammed with Ghosts. Sorry, it's a slight tangent, but we're all here for the art. So she jammed with Ghosts, as she put it, for 7 years. And that was artists from before the 1932 standardization of Arabic music in Egypt. And then she brought those voices who had been censored, and they'd all been censored. The decision was made in the Alexandria Opera House. So she launched the project in the Alexandria Opera House and called the night for those who were not invited, and brought them all back. So she's a very exciting artist. Yeah, thank you for bringing her here. I'd like us to make note of everything that's coming up in Beirut and Beyond, actually, because it's coming up next week. Okay, speaking of this and collaboration and international kind of nodes of collaborating, when it comes to accessibility, and this can mean a number of things over these past few years, right? This has changed a lot. What has the role of decentralization played in your festivals? What has its impact been, perhaps? And Hania, we'll start with you there, because I know that's been central to what's happened.
Yes, that's something that we've been practicing and thinking about a lot, especially after the revolution. So early on, when we started our youth program in 2008, we realized that in order to give access to, especially our young audience program, to give access to children, it wasn't possible to bring kids from all over Lebanon to Beirut to watch films. So we decided to go to them, especially when we worked with public schools, but also private schools which did not have the means to pay for the transportation, etc., because our screening were almost for free, sometimes for free. So we decided to go. We programmed films in the south, Saida, Nabatiye, Sur, in the north, in the Biqa, Hermel, wherever, everywhere where we could find a small auditorium or cinema or whatever. We screened films across the country. But for me, that was not really decentralization, because the word has to do with maybe defining what the center is and what the periphery is. So for us, it was also always a program that is coming out of Beirut and spreading. So it was more of an outreach program. And this we realized retroactivement. So that's what I said in the beginning when I said that the political positioning is something that you realize afterwards. So what happened during the appraisal or revolution or whatever uprising, so all these cities that suddenly emerged and took a lot of importance and maybe a leading role in at some moments, made us question what is happening in these cities. Who are these people? Why we don't know them? Why we have no connection, no dialogue, no relation with them? And this is where we changed completely the way we think our program. So today we continue working in these different cities, but we changed the way we work. So now, for instance, when we program a festival, we have different venues a little bit everywhere in Lebanon that we work with to come up with a program that they find suitable for their own audience. So it's a program that is almost co-curated with these different spaces, particularly Ishbilia, for instance, and Saida. And also there's no hierarchy in the way we present the program. So it's not a program that starts in Beirut and then goes to the to other cities, but we have many screenings that start in Saida and then come to Beirut, or even not come to Beirut. So the audience who want to really see this film, they have to go to Tripoli or they have to go to Saida, just as people in Saida sometimes have to come to Beirut to watch a film. So I think this is where decentralization took another meaning for us. And this is something also that was a little bit forced on us because we lost our space. We lost the cinema that we program all year round. We're working on a new space right now, but anyway. But I think that even when we have a space, we would like to continue this relationship with different venues across the country.
I'm gonna use decentralizing again, even though I'm very interested in your notion of what does the censor mean then, because there is a decentering of knowledge there. Because what you're saying is actually we don't hold all the knowledge of what you should have, right, and what should be going on in your city or your town. You have the epistemology, you have the body knowledge of what is needed, what people thirst for in your locale, and what different communities thirst for. So actually the decentralization, if we like, becomes not just about geography or specifically a location, but really about who knows and who contributes to the wider vision.
Yes, but it's not only about knowing what audiences want. Sometimes, and particularly, we work a lot with Ishbilia in Saida. So sometimes it's a question of taste. Sometimes they like this film, they want to defend it, they want to, even though they think it might be provocative for their audiences, but they really want to push it forward, and they think that they can push a little bit the boundaries with this specific title. So why not, because if we were to program films in Saida, we would be more careful of not hurting this audience. And there is something a little bit patronizing in this positioning, whereas when they decide to take the risk, it's, sometimes we're really admiratif, admiring of, their courage and their positioning.
Yeah, so it comes with the dismantling of power. Power. Yeah. Amani, I think after, if I'm not mistaken, after 2019, Beirut and Beyond spoke about, because due to the financial obstacles that came up, that there was almost a reorientation. And I want you to talk about decentralization as well, because I know that you've touched upon that when we spoke separately. But I've kind of sensed that there was also a re-centralization, if you like, a reorientation around local artists and bringing things home almost, and developing more locally as well. So I wonder if you can speak to both sides of that coin.
We've had a very regional perspective since the onset of Beirut and Beyond. And after 2019, the revolution, the uprising, or however we want to call it, the COVID and the explosion, this is when we had this responsibility, let's say, to bring back the word, of centralizing our work to Lebanon and to all the musicians who are based in Lebanon. This was our reaction, because we were realistic that we could not, of course, do an edition of the festival or bring people from the international scene to Beirut. We did not want to do any digital concerts, because we are aware that copyrights, ethics, and all of that in the region to broadcast concerts are not respected, so we didn't want to go into that. So we created a support program we supported 20 local artists or artists based in Beirut to create each one a track, and then we made a compilation that we did eventually made a release for 20 different new acts that were commissioned by Beirut and Beyond.
What's that called?
Beirut 2021.
Beirut 2021, nice.
And this was actually, it got designed and developed with Hania Mroué, who's a musician who has performed in the first edition of Beirut and Beyond. He also has a label in the UK and does a lot of amazing work. And this was a reaction to the situation that made us think that we should take a step back and reshuffle how we do things. This is when organically we shifted into also some like an institution or an entity that is trying to work on local development more than anything else. And the festival is coming to complete this development where we try to showcase what we have been doing with the local musicians throughout the year. This is, a recentralization of the work, of course, but part of the decentralization that has started already from the beginning was the fact that we try not to use one venue for the festival. We try to be around the city in one way to reach the different, Beirut is small, but also to go to the different quartier, or we're using a lot of French today, neighborhoods of Beirut, but also to show the different venues in Beirut that program music, who have like real stages, real music system, not only clubs who could do live or pubs who could do live music. So we wanted to show those venues to the professionals coming from the outside to see exactly how Beirut would be if they would be programming music. And recently, like going outside of Beirut was also a thing we were thinking about for quite a long time. We've done one concert once, actually in Tripoli in 2014. It was an experiment at the time because we had programmed a band called Elif that doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, but it was a mix between electronic and acoustic music. It was the audience that was there, like 3 tracks after the start of the concert, half of the audience left. It was.
They didn't like it.
They didn't like it. They were. We were surprised, but also it was a learning experience for us because we had collaborated with an organization there who the concert was for free, so it was promoted in a way that it's an Oriental band coming, so it was not also well promoted in the neighborhood. So that was a wrong collaboration that we have done at the time, and then. Due to our limited capacities, we're not a huge team, so we decided to focus our efforts only in Beirut. And then now, hopefully, we managed to collaborate with an NGO based in Tripoli called Rumman. And Rumman are working already on the development of the cultural scene in Tripoli. So this is their focus. So we partnered up with them to create a festival in Tripoli. And we did one pilot edition last year in September, and it's still a learning experience because we want Rumman to be the decision makers, to be taking the lead in the programming and the promotion and all of this. And we're trying only to share what we know already and what we have been doing in Beirut and Beyond. But a lot of the things that we do in Beirut and Beyond, like we only program original music. We don't program bands who do covers. But this has happened in Tripoli because we are still trying to explore how the audience there will react to the music we are bringing. And we haven't been radical in just bringing anyone or what we would have programmed in Beirut and Tripoli, because it was also a decision made with Rumman, like to have a pilot, to move slowly, and then see how things will develop.
Actually, it's interesting that the last point that you made, because I was thinking when you were talking about mapping, there seems to be, if I'm not mistaken, conversations between tradition and innovation. And Sharif, I'm going to come to you on that as well, because innovation is so much a part of and at the heart of what you do. And thinking around how tradition and innovation come into contact with each other in the festival environment.
They come into contact in daily life, in my opinion. So the festival's role is probably to try to encourage this when it happens. But because if you define tradition, it's basically, I'm going to take a shortcut, but it's basically people who are, a friend of mine used to say that the people who got it right are conservatories. So in the name conservatory, you have idea of conservation. So basically, for him, the role of a conservatory was to conserve, so to preserve music in a specific state. And the same somehow can be said with Shortcuts on all traditional music, which at its core has the idea to preserve a specific tradition, to keep it alive, to repeat it, etc., etc. But the word around it is changing. So at which point do the musicians, let's say, if we're talking about musicians, but it could be any artist in any art discipline, stop wanting to repeat the past or to reproduce the past, and actually want to move into the present time? I'm taking shortcuts, but not a huge shortcuts, in a way. And so the baggage they have, of course, is still here, but then there is a desire to move forward. And this I've seen happen more and more in the Arab world, which was maybe a bit lagging behind on that front. But in the last 10 years, maybe more, it's been picking up at a fantastic pace. It's beautiful. I love it personally. Like, I was really overwhelmed when it started happening. One example I could give was when a pretty famous Maqam ensemble, Mustafa Saeed's Asil, were very, very pushy in inviting me to come see their new piece, and I was like, you know, maybe they got it wrong. Like, why are, like, of course I'd love to see it, but why are they insisting so much? And so, of course, then I understood somehow, somewhere along the way, they had decided to, although they had a, I don't know, maybe a decade long of radical preservation, like even being more tradition than tradition itself in their approach. So they had principles like we don't use microphones, because when Maqam was invented, microphones didn't exist. So they were really purists in that sense. And if one of the musicians was here, maybe he could explain why at some point they decided they had to break it up. And that's what they did. And it for me, it was mind-blowing. They really did it. So the baggage is still here. You can feel the tradition, but then you can feel the music seeking new territory and new ground. And yeah, this for me gives way to some of the best music on the planet, in a way.
Agreed.
I don't know if I answered your question or if
No, you did beautifully. Thank you for that. It was no, absolutely you did. And archiving and heritage is a huge part of what you do at Metropolis as well, right? Yeah. So what's the relationship for you between tradition and innovation? Because there's so much focus on the youth and them coming up and creating, but archiving is so central also. So what's the dialogue between the two, do you believe? Or also the importance?
Yeah. So it was a long way before we arrived to dealing with archives and with our own film heritage and our collective memory, because it's a very sensitive topic in Lebanon, and I'll come to that. But from the beginning, with Metropolis, we decided that discovering contemporary cinema does not only mean following the current trends and looking at the list of Oscar-nominated films and the top list of festival titles, Cannes, Berlin, etc. But if we really want to create film literacy and film culture, it's very important to look at also what has been produced in the past. And when we mean the past, we mean from the beginning of cinema. And we started by organizing retrospectives of renowned directors, especially European directors, Fellini, especially the big Italian names, Visconti, etc., Bresson, etc. But then we realized that for older films that were at the beginning of cinema, we wanted to also rediscover these works, but to present them in a contemporary way. We collaborated with Irtijal on creating a series of cine concerts where silent films are presented with a live band, and usually it's a very, it's a very radical kind of music for the images that we're screening, and I think this contrast between the interpretation that the artists make of the film and maybe the initial score of the title, I think this creates a new understanding of the work. It makes it more contemporary. It makes it speak to the young generation in an easier way. Then we realized, after doing around 25 cine concerts, if I'm not mistaken, that we haven't touched yet on our own history. And there is definitely a big need, because this, I don't know if you know, but our own film heritage is scattered a little bit everywhere. Most of it is lost. So we felt a kind of responsibility, but also we felt the desire and the need to contribute in preserving this patrimoine, this, heritage, exactly. Of course, restoring films, preserving films, putting them, cleaning the prints, putting them at the right temperature, etc., in archives, cold storage rooms, etc. That's important. But what is much more important is offering these films again to the audience to discover them, maybe rediscover them, because we think that if we put these films under the word heritage, which or tradition, or I don't like these words, because it gives the impression that these works belong to the past.
Right.
In fact, not at all. We are screening right now at Galaxy Cinema a retrospective of Jocelyne Saab. Her films were made, between the early late 70s, early 80s, and honestly, it's depressing how contemporary these films are, and the political discourse is just, it speaks about our situation today. These films could have been made in 2022 or 2023. So this makes us reflect a lot about our history, about transmission, how it did not happen, how the history in Lebanon stopped at some point. There's a gap somewhere. So reconnecting with these works, give them a second life, and not only reconnecting by viewing these films, but we would like to make these films, or maybe not just Lean's film, but all this patrimoine of Lebanese cinema, make it available for artists to come and, work with them, use them, do whatever, do
Keep them
artworks, keep them alive,
Yeah.
because exactly, thank you for using this word. We had this symposium also last week, and one of the archivists at the biggest film archive in the world, Bologna Cinematheque, she said that archives are not dead objects, they are alive and kicking. And we just need to see that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I really enjoy your interrogation of words. I really enjoy it, actually, as a writer. Folks, I'm going to hand over to you guys. If you have any questions, please throw your hand up if you're ready to ask a question. And we have a microphone. I'll just ask you to come to the bottom of the stairs here. Anyone? You have a question? Fantastic. You want to shout? What I will say, guys, is if the event is being recorded. If you want your question to remain anonymous, feel free to shout from your seat. We can technically hear you, okay? If you want your question to be part of the recording and a part of the conversation that is archived, then speak into the microphone. Then you want the microphone. There you go, Mark. Thanks.
So, hi, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing with us everything that you shared. I think this has been enlightening on so many different levels. But I want to go back to radical care and to the idea of reciprocity in care, since you talked about it specifically with artists. But I want to take it to another level. How does that reciprocity come to play with the audience? So when does the audience come into your thinking while curating a festival? How do you react to audiences' reactions to what you programmed? And how do you perceive growth in terms of audience in your festivals? So it's a question actually to all three.
For all three. Okay.
So,
Hania, do you want to start with that?
it's not an easy question. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, audience is crucial because when, at least for Metropolis, when we started this project, we started it because we believed there is an audience for the films that we wanted to screen. And again, this idea of creating the cinema came from my experience with Ayam Beirut Cinema. When we introduced Arab films, we thought that I was going to be interested in that. But then I realized that this huge interest in Arab films and independent films should be maybe pushed a little bit more. And maybe the audience is anybody. It could be students, it could be our neighbors in the building, it could be people on the street. Anybody is a potential audience. So when we curate a festival or when we program a film, we don't necessarily speak to people that we know. We don't. There is also a term that I really hate. It's target audience. Mm-hmm. It's not targeted. I don't know who is gonna come, and I don't care about numbers. Sometimes you screen a film and people start leaving, okay? And it's okay. Maybe there's only one person that's gonna stay, and this person is gonna relate to the film, and it's gonna change something in his way of thinking. It's gonna bring something to this person, and that's great. If we can touch one person by screening a film, that's huge. So numbers are really not important. What we try to do is try not to presume that we know who's gonna come. We try to promote all our festivals as if they speak potentially to everyone who lives in Beirut. Of course, because there's a question of financing and sustainability, etc., we have to try to understand a little bit the audience so that we don't make crazy plans. But I think it's also dangerous to try a lot, because we can simply turn into a commercial cinema that caters for what the audience want. I heard once a programmer say something, and I really like to repeat it, that if you screen a film and the audience doesn't like it, then maybe you should screen it again. I don't know if I answered your question.
It's a fantastic answer.
I thought you were going to ask about the care between funding entities and festivals. But it's audience.
Let's get controversial at the end. Go.
Let's get radical.
Exactly.
I think like Hania was saying in the beginning, that we exist because of the audience. It's we are festivals, so we are there first and foremost for the audience to. We always use for our audience to discover new music. This is what we try to bring to the audience in Beirut. I feel that throughout the few editions that we have done, we created a kind of trust from the local audience, because sometimes we have sold outs that for bands who have never performed in Beirut, and who are not known. So there is this kind of trust that what we are bringing, they want to come to discover it, and they would maybe think that what we are programming and what we are creating for them is going to be good. And I love this. I love to feel and to believe that this is how the audience see Beirut and Beyond as a platform. We have, targeted audience is not a nice word, but we have to. We have to somehow, because we are a showcase festival, we have to answer to several audiences, I would say, because when we program, we have in mind that the bands we are programming need to be programmed in the festivals we are inviting, or need to be signed with one of the labels we are inviting. So we have to also think in the possibilities that those bands we are programming have through being in Beirut and Beyond. So this is one side of how we think when we program. So part of our audience is the international delegates or the international professionals who attend the festival as a showcase, and the other part is the local. Sometimes we are certain that a band will be liked by the audience but not the professionals, and this is when we are radical, and we still program them because we want them to or we want to convince the professionals that this is a good band to be whatever with you, to work with you, or to give them the opportunity or the possibility to be booked or to work internationally. The care isn't radical in our stage all the time, but we try to take into consideration all those layers when we look at our audience.
Thank you. Sharif, do you have an answer for this?
Sorry?
I said, do you have an answer for this one?
I have many answers.
Many answers. I thought you might.
No, I can. Rather amusing story came to my mind.
Yeah.
So, at least in Irtijal, there is a point where we don't really care about the audience, to be honest. So, a situation where a musician is very provocative and will repel the audience is not necessarily a bad thing for us. At least for me, I take responsibility for the choices. But there is, I think, the only moment where I thought, okay, this went a bit too far, at least regarding the audiences we have in Beirut, and made me think that I should maybe be more careful. So I booked a Japanese duo. So these are two musicians who actually came all the way from Japan, and they played in a duo. So it's saxophone and trumpet. And so the situation I will describe. So the audience is here. They both sit down. The concert actually starts, but absolutely nothing happens for a long time. 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And then let's say the trumpet player picks up the trumpet, puts it in his mouth, on his mouth, and then produces this sound. And then you have 15 more minutes with absolutely nothing. Same thing happens with the sax player, which, for me, is a very interesting thing to experience. But, everybody came out white, yellow. I got insults. I got phone calls. Some people couldn't sleep all night. This is true. I don't know why. And so I thought, okay, there's a limit. No more minimalist Japanese musician. I didn't book them again. So that's my funny story.
Thank you for that. Fantastic. We have time for maybe just 2 more questions. Yes, please come down. You want to take the mic? Cool. And if it's If it's dedicated to a certain member of the panel, then let us know.
I think it's for all three.
For all three.
Can you elaborate more about how your funding structures or funding sources allow or limit radicality and decentralization?
Nice question. Thank you. No, nice question. Thank you. Thank you. Who wants to start with this one?
Decentralization, it's easy. It's trending now, and it's easy to get funding for this. I mean, you can write it in any proposal and... Sorry, Mark.
Write this down, artists. Write this down.
There are a few words. This is one of them.
Tell us a few more, won't you? Tell us a few more.
Yeah. But honestly, when it comes that's an excellent question. When it comes to artistic choices, let's say, usually funders like rarely or almost never interfere in our programming. There's never any condition put on, or at least the kind of funds that we apply to, let's say. If there is any conditional funding when it's come to artistic choices, then we do not apply from the beginning. Usually the funding bodies that we work with are rather partners, so people who understand our work, understand its value, but we also share the same values, and I think this protects everybody. It protects us also, and it helps us be more creative, radical, free in our programming. Now, the problem with funding is when it comes to reporting and evaluation, and when they ask about impact and they want numbers and how many people attended this and how many, and please describe the gender balance and how many female, how many male. So imagine I enter this room and I start counting how many women, how many men, how many, I don't know. So this is becoming a little bit problematic because, again, for us, when we program, it's not about numbers. What we care for is presenting this artist and allowing him or her to exchange with the audience. And for us, this kind of exchange is important. I understand that even funders have also reports to give, and so they need these numbers to also be able to raise funds themselves. But this is something that we learned that we need to discuss early on with our donors, and there has rarely been any problem on that level. So I guess we've been lucky. But when we want to take even more risk, we have to secure what we call unrestricted funding, and this does not come from donors. This comes from the audience. This comes from the box office. Okay, so this is where the importance of the audience is they allow us to program even more freely. So yeah, that's why I said that it's this kind of relationship with our audience that we like to nurture, because they are somehow one of our main donors.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think that the funding plays a huge role in allowing us to be radical. Because I think when we want to make a radical choice or when we want to take risks, what's important is for us to be a solid structure. Which I still say, and I mean, until now we've been operating for the last 9 years and we're still struggling to be sustainable. Maybe sustainable is a huge word, but at least a solid structure that can face a radical decision, or that can be strong enough to make those kinds of risks and radical stands. And I think this is where a funding that trusts an entity that is funding it, I mean, a funding entity that trusts us, will allow us to make the decisions we want to do the programming we would want, and eventually allow us to be in that positions. I think, I don't know if I'm trying to explain myself properly, but it's not about the conditions that they would put if what we program or how many women or, you know, all the boxes that we should tick, because eventually we're ticking them without having those conditions to be there, because they are in our back, and eventually they are there. We are doing them without having to answer.
To be told.
To
that
be
you
told
need to do
to,
it.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And like Hania said, I mean, whenever there is a funding that has those kind of conditions that we don't want to do, we will not apply to. So eventually we are doing those, and I feel that, like, our relationship with mainly the funders of Beirut and Beyond, who are mainly the Norwegian embassy in Beirut, but also the British Council, the Institut Français, AFAQ, and it has always been, I would say, unconditioned in brackets, in entre guillemets, yeah. But it has, what we've been looking at is for them to fund a mission more than an impact or a results framework that we need to. It's more of a values that we are trying to work on in the music industry.
It also reminds me of what we were saying about principles and how it's more atmospheric. You can't count that. You can't measure that. You can't measure an impact when it comes to what really matters, which is if something has ended up resisting a status quo without it being created to resist the status quo. You know, this is not measurable. So that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Especially, I think that how many editions have you postponed or cancelled, or how many numbers you had to change eventually in your, the report? Like, we live in an unstable place where we have to adapt, and it doesn't have to be about, just results.
Yeah, yeah. Sharif?
It's kind of unfair that I speak last all the time.
We'll come back around this way for the last question.
Funny story.
So, in that case, they've kind of covered it. Okay. What I can add, it's a boundaries issue. So there is always a way to modify a project to satisfy a funder, but within boundaries.
Yeah.
So, basically, if it's making your project veer off, then makes no sense. Yeah. Happened a lot. So, but sometimes, the funder have a requirement which you can meet or match without necessarily affecting the quality or the content. So then it's not a problem.
I feel like Irtijal as well has a very specific identity, and so it becomes. For sure, that becomes at the heart of what you do, right? So, like, funding has to reflect the identity, and that's probably not something that you have to consciously think about, especially after doing it for 23 years, right? You know what is compatible because it has.
Yes, but sometimes it has happened that the funders have a better idea than mine. It has happened. Okay. Yeah. It's not impossible. So they're like, why don't you do this? And I'm like, actually
great
why
idea.
Not? Sure.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm just going to take a very brief moment for you guys to let us know what's coming up in the next month. I know we have Beirut and Beyond happening, so perhaps we can start there. And Sharif and Hania, if there's something you want to let people know about while we're here, then let's just take a minute to do that.
Yeah, great. I'm going to promote the festival. So it's next week from the 2nd till the 5th of February. We're going to be the first 2 nights at the Ballroom Blitz and the second 2 nights in KED. Every night there is a lineup of minimum 2, maximum 7 artists on stage. So, and during the day there are workshops, talks, coaching sessions, one-on-one coaching sessions. So take a look on our program. It's online on our website or Instagram. Register, get your tickets, or just let us see you there.
Yes, exactly. exciting. Thank you. Yeah.
It should have been. It's recorded. I can use it for a.
Absolutely. Yeah. Get it to them straight away. We've got a week to go, guys. Sharif, is there anything you want to
I have nothing to promote, but yeah, go to Beirut and Beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll all meet there, yeah?
Thanks.
So we have this festival. It's called the Second Encounter that is running right now. It's a festival that we launched this year, but it's going to become like a yearly meeting with, as the title says, it's the second encounter with films. So we'll be screening classics, but we'll also screen films that use or deal with archival footage. So the festival is running until Thursday, but as part of our Cinematheque project, we are opening a space that's going to be ready, I think, in a month or maximum 1 month and a half. And it's going to be called Cinematheque Beirut. And this space is a kind of a big library of books, magazines, a viewing station for everything related to Lebanese cinema. So we're working on gathering around 2,000 titles. We're not there yet. The titles are all already indexed on our database, which has the same title, Cinematheque Beirut. But so hopefully when this space opens, at least some of these films will be accessible for viewing there. And and you're very welcome to come visit us. We'll be in Mar Mkhayel.
Wow, that is so exciting. That is so exciting. Really. All right. Thank you all for listening so intently and joining us for this conversation. Please do give a huge round of applause for the work that that is being done here for all of us, really for all of us. From Sharif Sahnawi and Irtijal Festival, from Amani Semaan and from Hania Mroué.
Thank you. Thank you.